Okay, let's dive right into it. Today, we're going to break down a concept that is absolutely central to the relationship between the government and Indigenous peoples in Canada, the duty to consult. It's a term you hear thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean? What does it look like in the real world? Let's get into it.
So this question really gets to the heart of the matter. Imagine a new mine or a pipeline is being proposed. Is it really enough for the government to just send a letter that says, hey, just so you know, this is happening? Or does the law demand something more? This very question is the engine that's been driving decades of legal change in Canada.
So what is this duty, exactly? To really get it, we have to see it as more than just a rule. It's a fundamental shift in how the conversation between the Crown and Indigenous peoples is supposed to happen.
Okay, so the crucial phrase here is constitutional obligation. This isn't just some nice-to-have policy or a suggestion. It's baked right into Canada's highest law. It forces the Crown, and that's both the federal and provincial governments, to move past simply informing Indigenous communities and toward a genuine two-way conversation before a decision gets made, especially if that decision could negatively affect their rights.
So where does this really powerful obligation even come from? Well, it wasn't just invented out of thin air. It's built on a legal foundation that goes right to the very core of Canada's Constitution.
These are the two pillars holding it all up. First, you've got Section 35 of the Constitution. That's the part that officially recognizes and affirms existing Aboriginal and treaty rights. Then there's this really important legal idea called the honor of the Crown. It basically says the government has to act with integrity, with fairness, and in good faith in all its dealings with Indigenous peoples. It's there to make sure the Crown doesn't use its power unfairly.
And this quote just nails it. The Supreme Court of Canada itself said this isn't just some empty phrase you chant. It's not just lip service. It demands real, tangible action. It's a promise that has to be kept through actual, concrete practices, and consultation is one of the most important ones.
Our modern understanding of this duty was really forged in the courts. There was this trio of huge, landmark cases back in the mid-2000s that basically changed everything. First, the Haida Nation case laid out the basic framework. Then, Taku River Tlingit clarified how this duty could actually work within existing government processes. And then, Mikisew Cree confirmed a critical point. Just because a treaty was signed hundreds of years ago doesn't mean the Crown's duty to consult just disappears today.
All right, so that's the foundation. But this duty doesn't just apply to every single thing the government does. There's actually a specific legal test, a three-part trigger, that determines when the government is legally required to sit down and consult.
Let's break this down. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1. The Crown knows, or really should know, about a potential Aboriginal or treaty right. And notice this says potential. It doesn't have to be a proven, court-decided right yet. Step 2. The Crown is planning some kind of action. This could be anything from issuing a permit for a mine to creating a new policy. And Step 3, there's a chance that action could negatively impact the right. If all three of those boxes are checked, then boom, the duty is triggered.
Now, this is so important to understand. This duty isn't like a light switch. It's not just on or off. It's much more like a dimmer switch or a sliding scale. The level of consultation that's required can change dramatically depending on the situation.
So think of it like this. At the very low end of the spectrum, if you've got a project with a pretty minor impact on a weaker claim, maybe just notifying the community and sharing some information is enough. But as the strength of that Indigenous claim goes up and the potential impact gets more serious, well, the Crown's responsibility grows right along with it. It moves into a meaningful back-and-forth dialogue. And at the highest end, we're talking a major project impacting a strong established right, you're looking at deep engagement. That can mean funding for communities to participate fully and a real potential for significant changes to the project.
This brings us to a really critical distinction: consultation versus accommodation. Consultation is the process. It's the conversation, the dialogue, the listening. Accommodation, on the other hand, is the potential outcome. It's the action that might be taken to address the concerns raised, like maybe changing a project's route or sharing revenue. The government has to consult in good faith, but the law doesn't automatically guarantee a specific outcome. And that's a constant point of tension.
So, at the end of the day, who is actually on the hook for making sure this happens? And maybe even more important, where is this whole thing headed? What's next?
The law is crystal clear on this. This responsibility, this duty, lies with the Crown and the Crown alone. A company proposing a project might be asked to help out, to do some of the legwork, but the government can't just pass the buck. They can't delegate their legal obligation. The buck stops with them.
And this whole standard is evolving. While the duty to consult is the law of the land in Canada, the international community is increasingly talking about something else. It's called Free, Prior, and Informed Consent, or FPIC. It comes from the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and here's the key difference. Consultation is a process designed to influence a decision. FPIC is a process for Indigenous peoples to make the decision, to say yes, no, or maybe yes, but with these conditions. It's a much, much higher bar.
So what does this all mean in the real world? Well, for governments, the message is pretty clear. Get in there early, be genuine about it, and be prepared to actually make changes. For industry, even though the legal duty isn't technically theirs, engaging early and building good relationships is just smart business. It seriously reduces the risk of long delays and costly legal challenges down the road.
And for Indigenous communities, this framework is a really powerful tool. It confirms they are rights holders, not just another stakeholder group with an opinion. It gives them the power to develop their own rules for how they want to be consulted. And critically, it gives them the ability to challenge the government in court if that duty isn't met. And a successful challenge, that can stop a multi-million-dollar project right in its tracks.
And all of this leaves us with one final massive question. Look, the duty to consult was a huge leap forward. It moved us away from unilateral government decisions and towards required dialogue. But as the national conversation around reconciliation gets deeper and more serious, the question is becoming, is a process that's designed to influence a decision still enough? Or is the future moving towards a standard where Indigenous peoples have the right to consent? That's the conversation that's shaping the next chapter of this constitutional story.